It heartens me no end because for a 4-day weekend or a 3-day weekend to see such a good turnout is indeed very, very heartening. I would like to thank all of you, and I sincerely hope that your takeaway from this program will be commensurate with the enthusiasm of your participation. My previous assignment with the Ministry of Finance equips me to make you a presentation on what I understand to be India's growth story, and that's what I will do. There is so much gloom and doom that we have faced through 2011, through the last year. Policy paralysis, huge issues on corruption in public life, so many issues that kind of rebounded on the administration and on the government, that a general air of gloom and doom is what we faced. And perhaps in that position, and coming again at this stage just after the budget, when again there seems to be so many questions occupying the public space and public mind on what is going to happen, what are uncertainties, is the Vodafone case going to lead to many other such cases being reopened, what is the GAR going to be, the General Anti-Avoidance Rules. There are so many issues and questions where people always take it that there are strong negatives around the Indian economy. What I'm going to present to you is something different. I'm going to present to you and tell you and share with you my belief of why the fundamentals of Indian economy are strong. It's not that you don't know them. Each one of you knows it. But the problem is that with all that we face, the questions that keep agitating our minds, we generally forget what these strong fundamentals are. And I'd like to take you straight through these. See, the Indian GDP has grown consistently. Over the last 4 decades is what I present to you. And in the first decade you had, first and the second decade, that's the 70s and the 80s, you had what is called the Hindu rate of growth, 4 to 5%. And then on from the 90s and the last decade really has been the post-liberalization, post-globalization era, and you see that the Indian economy has responded very, very positively to these measures because there has been a consistent and a higher rate of growth in the GDP. What I am presenting to you is the decadal average. That's 5.7 or 6% and 7%. Incidentally, the Indian GDP has actually outperformed the GDPs of emerging markets. We have had a 12-year average of 7.3%, whereas a 12-year average of emerging markets was 5.4%, and the developed world had an average of 1.8%. So the fundamental of growth remains in India. There could be issues on deficits, whether it's fiscal, current, revenue. There could be issues on inflation. But this fundamental has not changed. There has also been fair degree of volatility on manufacturing front. In the last year, there has been what appears to be a slowdown. Not certainly a downturn, but a slowdown which is recoverable. And that is what we seem to see in the last. There are many reasons for this. The interest rates, the monetary policy tweaking to handle inflation, how that affected investment plans in the corporate sphere, how that affected manufacturing, all of these issues, each of them is a story to tell. I'm not going into those because we all know them. They've been fairly well exercised in the public mind. But another fundamental, Indian public finances are in good shape. Now take a look at the total debt. Total debt as a percent, total debt is India, that's center and the states. The total debt as a percentage of the GDP was perilously close to collapse in the financial years 2004-2005, when it reached a close to breakdown point of 90%, 89% in financial year 2005. Okay. That debt as a percentage of GDP today is at 61%. Okay. That's a strong fundamental. Growth in India is driven by three pillars, three drivers: consumption, investment, and savings. Okay. Now, there are numbers given at the bottom that it would be, we expect consumption to be 2.2 trillion US dollars in 2020, a growth of almost sevenfold in 2 decades. Investments in infrastructure we expect to be a little over 1 trillion, 1.2 trillion over the next decade. And savings we expect to grow in 2020 to a level where the GDP is today. That's $1.5 trillion. That is where the economy is headed. These are fundamentals that drive growth. None of these are affected by issues like your revenue deficits, fiscal deficits, current account deficits. These are important, no doubt. These are important from the point of view of how we are going to handle inflation, how the economy is going to be handled, but these are also determinants of public policy. Okay? If you are able to cut down your expenditure, if you are able to curtail your subsidies, of which there are strong announcements in the budget. Now, whether those announcements will be met or not is another question. But there are strong statements made by the government in the budget this year. Investments in gold over 10 years has seen a CAGR of 19.5% approximately, and property of 15.7%. Now, what we have to do is essentially tackle these mindsets to bring monies out of this area in future investments. I'm not saying that sell gold and buy shares. I'm just saying that as we go forward, since 32% of our GDP is going to be invested, look at a shift. Look at policies from a regulatory perspective, from a government's perspective. Look at procedures, again from a regulatory or a ease perspective for investors, and try and build a system so that more of this 55% that is getting invested annually of household savings comes into the equity markets. Ladies and gentlemen, this is all I would like to say. Thank you very much. I conclude my brief presentation.